I'll be completely honest with you, I don't watch much Super GT. Not because I'm not interested, but because as someone from the UK, and a series primarily based in Asia, it's not exactly straightforward to watch. The dastardly thing that is time zones. However, recently I was watching a practice session of theirs that was broadcast on YouTube, and it caught my eye seeing a GT500 specification race car, in the form of the latest generation Honda Civic, in and amongst competition that was based around other perhaps more conventional Japanese sports cars. Which got me curious, have we had any other slightly left field and strange race vehicles compete in this series? And I rather quickly discovered that there was. Enough for there to be multiple parts of what will turn out to be a mini-series. So without much more delay, we'll get on to the first vehicle, which we'll get out of the way quickly, seeing as this is one that most people are aware of. Now if you happen to not be aware of the racing version of this particular car, and just see the words Toyota Prius, you're probably not all that pleased, but just bear with a minute. Of course the Prius has been somewhat of a joke and meme in the car community since almost its very inception. However, what if I tell you about a Prius with an enormous body kit and flared wheel arches, and a 3.4 litre V8 engine put in the middle of the car, that's been inside LMP1 machines? It was still raced as a hybrid, albeit the lithium-ion battery in the racing version was a bit bigger compared to the production version. And the car has been a race winner in its history, becoming the first hybrid race car to win a class in a Super GT. It was in competition from 2012 to 2018, until it got updated into a front-engine car in 2019, but was given a 5.4 litre V8 engine instead, used in a more conventional GT3 version of the Lexus RCF. One of the new Priuses, or Pries, or however the plural of Prius is meant to go, was still a hybrid, but the other car run by the team was without the hybrid component. The team that ran these cars was the APR team, which have been in Japanese GT racing since 1998, albeit were then a racing division of a different company until APR was its own thing in the year 2000. Unfortunately, this new version wasn't quite as competitive as its predecessor, albeit it did still take a victory in its existence. The car became somewhat of a hero vehicle in Japan. It was a family car converted into an absolutely crazy supercar destroying monster. Seeing this thing overtake racing versions of supercars that people dream of owning was a sight to behold. For once, the joke was on the other cars. Now even if you were the biggest Prius cynic, you gotta admit that this is not only a cool Prius, but a cool car period. However, that isn't the only Toyota family car converted into a supercar crusher. This one though is a little bit less known about. A family sedan slash saloon car sold only in Japan, the Toyota MarkX isn't exactly what you'd expect to see be turned into a silhouette supercar destroyer. However, that's exactly what one was turned into. A bit like the Prius, this car would compete in the GT300 class, and would be created using the Super GT's mother chassis regulations. Back in 2017, which was the first season of the car in action, the mother chassis platform had teams use the same gearbox, monocoque and engine, which in this case is quite ironic, because it therefore meant in the Toyota was a 4.5 litre V8 engine from a Nissan. If anything though, the story of the team that ran the car itself is just as amazing. It was known as Saitama Toyopet Green Brave, although nowadays the Toyopet part isn't part of the name anymore. A car dealer, they thought that motor racing was a good way to understand how to appreciate the vehicles they were selling to the public. This quote in particular is awesome. If car sellers don't know how to enjoy cars, they won't be able to tell customers how to enjoy cars. And they make sure they do that by having race team members who work for the car dealer and usually do the servicing duties there. Unfortunately, this car didn't have anywhere near as much success as the Prius, 2017 and 2018 being fairly forgettable years. But in its final year of competition in 2019, it did have a couple of podium finishes and a pole position, which I guess ended the effort on a high note, leaving the two drivers, Hiroki Yoshida and Shigekazu Wakisaka, 9th in the championship standings. For 2020, the team would be utilising a GT300 spec Toyota Supra. We then come on to a couple of cars that whilst maybe aren't strange race cars, in the world of Japanese GT racing they are somewhat oddballs. We begin with a car that's won the GTS class of the Le Mans 24 Hours, wins the American Le Mans Series, and the FIA GT Championship title. So when one of those cars headed off to Japan for what was in 2004 called the All Japan Grand Touring Car Championship, before later being known as Super GT from 2005 onwards, would that success be carried over there? Toyotas Racing certainly hoped so, as they were bringing over one of the pro-drive built Ferrari 550 GTS's to the GT500 category. In the end though, its 2-year tenure in Super GT was not brilliant. It failed to qualify for one race in 2004, and across the car's time in the series, its best finish was 12th, and never scored any points. Now the car's lack of speed could be attributed to a few things. This was a car designed to GT1 regulations. However, whilst the car was able to compete in the Japanese series, it would have to have a few changes. Air restrictor size, and perhaps more notably, some aerodynamic changes, especially the back wing, which was so big you could probably have 3 separate picnics going on at the same time on it. These factors didn't help, and updated aerodynamics made no major difference to their results. Also, the GT500 class is very competitive, with the big Japanese brands taking part, taking it very seriously. A privateer, in a car built originally for different regulations, was always going to have a very daunting task ahead of them. After 2005, the team decided to bring the Ferrari back to its Le Mans specification, and compete in the new Japan Le Mans Challenge in 2006, where they would have a better time of things, until the series ended after 2007. The team though were known for entering non-Japanese race cars into the JGTC/Super GT series. The Aston Martin DBR9 is a modern sports car racing icon, a stunning looking race car with a glorious soundtrack, and was incredibly successful too, winning on its debut at the almighty Sebring 12 Hours, class victory at Le Mans, titles in FIA GT racing, among many other achievements. So when it competed in Super GT in 2009, would that success continue? I think you can see where I might be going with this sadly. Ran by Team Nova, although to be honest it was just a rebranding of the previously mentioned Toyotas Racing, the Aston would compete in 3 events that year, the first race at Okayama and both contests at Fuji. They'd finish all 3 of them in 14th place. And that's all we'd see of the Aston in Super GT. In general I can't find much information on this effort. I can tell you that the chassis may have been the same as what Phoenix Racing had used earlier on in FIA GT competition, but other than that, not much sadly. Whether this had the same issues as the Ferrari regarding air restrictor and aerodynamic changes, who knows? Although the aerodynamic changes don't seem immediately obvious compared to the Ferraris, if there are indeed any at all. But whatever the reasons may be, it was unfortunately not a particularly competitive vehicle in Super GT. There have been some very prominent Ford GT race cars, but I think this one isn't quite as well known. A GT300 specification Ford GT that was used by the DHG racing outfit from 2006 to 2007. The 5.4 litre V8 from the road car was gone, and in its place was a DHG modified 3.5 litre V8 engine, either from a Formula Nippon Mugen engine or a 90s Ford engine that was derived from the same unit as F1 cars at the time. I've seen both being mentioned. All I will say is that whichever this 3.5 litre V8 engine is derived from, either one wouldn't necessarily be the first engine that would come to mind about being put inside a Ford GT. But that's Japanese GT racing for you. When it came to the results on track, well, after failing to qualify for its first race in the same season in 2006, it would collect a podium finish, and finish regularly in the top 10. Sadly for 2007, it would only collect one top 10 position, with 9th at the Suzuka 1000 km, where Daisuke Ikeda and Taku Bamba were joined in that race by Hideo Fukuyama, who you may recall drove in a couple of NASCAR Cup Series races beforehand. 2007 is the last we'd see of the Ford GT GT300 in action, and the last time we saw Ford in action at all in Super GT, but who knows, maybe we'll see a Mustang GT3 take part in the future. With that though, we'll end the first episode here, so thank you very much for watching. As I said, there will be a few more episodes to come in the hopefully nearish future, as this series has a fair amount of these race cars, which perhaps people who haven't watched Super GT a lot may not be too familiar with. However, if you enjoyed this video, then I'd be enormously appreciative if you did hit the like and subscribe buttons. Until next video though, be kind to each other and enjoy the rest of your day.